Okay, now I have to click live. So we are live. Hello everyone, and welcome to this series of talks, Future in Blockchain at Imperial College London, Faculty of Engineering. My name is Nguyen, Doctoral Fellow at the Department of Design Engineering. Today we are hosted by Mana Lab and Near Foundation. For those of you who don't know, Mana Lab is our research group on future of work and blockchain at Dyson School of Design Engineering. Together with researchers at Imperial College and Mana Search, we will be working on developing scientific research on how the blockchain technology will affect leadership, organizations, and the future of work. And before I introduce our guests, I just wanted to mention about the Q&A session. Please do drop any questions that you have in the YouTube chat, and we'll come back to that at the end of the event. So it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our guest of today's session. We're going to have a fireside chat with Lloyd Wahed, founder and CEO of Mana Search, London-based headhunting company working with fintech and blockchain companies. He's also a host of the London Stock Exchange Searching for Mana podcast. And our second guest, Max Jungreis, crypto lead at Plug and Play Ventures, and also previously co-founder at the Stanford University's Future of Digital Currency Initiative. So welcome to Imperial, guys. It's great to have you. And I'm just going to start with first question that it's bothering me. It's bothering a lot of students that I've been working over the last few months. If you're a graduate, and this, encompasses all the institutions. It could be Imperial, it could be UCL, could be even Art University. If you're graduating right now, why would you go to a blockchain company instead of going to Goldman Sachs or McKinsey, as we used to aim a few years ago? Max, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So, I think within the scope of the future of financial services or the future of work, right, which I would say is very relative to a lot of professional service companies like McKinsey. There's a number of different paths that one can take, and really at the core, it comes down to, curiosity and adaptability and figuring out what you're interested in personally. So it's hard to give a blanket, statement, almost a blanket prescription to individuals and say, Web3 or digital asset startups are the right path out of school, or going and kind of refining some of those skills that might be then transferable to Web3 is the right path. So I think it really comes down to the individual. But what I can say is that we are in a period of time right now that I really think is pivotal for a lot of young people that are seeing what's happening within digital assets and how fast it's growing. And I've seen a number of really well-respected VCs who are saying that, this really reminds them of the dot-com boom. And this is not a statement that we, say lightly, because, it could be easy to compare a lot of new trends in technology to that dot-com boom, that frenzied time where people were building and companies were succeeding, and some were obviously failing as well. But I would say that at this point in time, it's really crucial to figure out what skill you can refine, whether that's in the scope of a Web2 or a Web3 company, and then bring that kind of position and that kind of skill set to the industry as a whole. Because, for me, one of the most important things when it comes to Web3, I think building skills in Web3 should be based on foundational skills in Web2. Now, if you think that a role is there for you in Web3 that allows you to kind of refine those foundational skills, then that is, that is more power to you. But, I think at the end of the day, we just want to see the industry kind of mature. And with that, the candidates that are coming in, like there really needs to be this foundational set of skills that then you can draw upon and build upon. So that's kind of my perspective on that question.
I think it's a fantastic way to think through it. Max, and just to riff on top of some of the thinking there, if you consider also Web2 companies might have divisions within them that are more future looking and innovative and focused on crypto, blockchain, Web3. So there's really a recommendation, as a career headhunter, that I tend to get people to think through, which is, different drivers that pretty much everybody has different weightings of in their career. And so, obvious ones might be finance. It could be short-term versus medium-term versus long-term wealth creation that you want to consider. And it depends on your own situation sometimes and your own ambitions. And then there are other things which traditionally might have been prestige that people consider. And something like this, each generation changes. So if you go back 20 years ago, it could have been very prestigious to go work at Goldman Sachs. Mimi is the example company that you posed the question on. And 10 years ago, it certainly would have been very prestigious to go to Google or Amazon if that's important to you. And in this generation, I think that there's probably no question that it starts to become to go to an FTX or one of the exchanges and so on and so forth. And then really the really important thing is, well, what are you actually doing? So, the people who tend to not just be most successful, but to be happy whilst being successful, find the thing that they're good at doing. And this doesn't necessarily come straight away, but you should be on the search for it so that there's not, a giving away of energy when you're doing stuff, but it just feels like a passion. It's almost something that you would enjoy to do in the evening or the weekend as a good sanity test for if you're really passionate about something. So what you start to do is look at, well, what are the actual projects going on? Is that something that I think is really cool? And I think what probably we're seeing is this really exciting period of time, a little bit like .com, where, if I think about 3 years ago in Fintech as an example, it's brilliant. It's digitalizing, in some instances, consumer experiences for the better, what feels contemporary, but it's not as monumentally different as on the blockchain right now, where we're starting to see truly creative, decentralized concepts, allow people to live in almost several different projects at the same time. And so I think that it's something that you want to absolutely be looking into and researching. And if it's for you, then what I would say to answer the question that Mimi posed is you should absolutely go to Goldman Sachs, because it's a brilliant place if that's what feels like the right career move for you, and you're going to learn a lot of stuff. There's going to be brilliant people there, and quite frankly, they've got a load of initiatives that are Web3 focused, so you might be able to get into that pocket at Goldman Sachs. But if there's just something innate in you that you love what's going on in blockchain right now, you were to go to a company that then wasn't everything, let's say it just failed in 2 years' time, as long as in that 2 years you're networking, you're learning, you're getting to understand more about the space and connecting with it, then I don't think any headhunter or future employer is going to look at that as a negative. So I think the risk that people kind of perceive their career moves through is often less risky than you might think, as long as you're learning and you're kind of doing what you're hoping in the next several years is going to be the thing that connects. Max, I think you're a really interesting person to be talking to, because you somebody who has come out of education in the last several years and has found a seminal role as head of credit at Plug and Play. And I wondered if you could be so kind to talk through, firstly, for anybody who doesn't know what the great things that Plug and Play get up to are, and then perhaps what your experience has been of coming into the space.
Yeah, sure. So, one last thing on that point that you mentioned around like Web3 and jobs in Web3. I think a major key is understanding your area of interest and value add within that ecosystem. So if it's investing, on-chain analysis, community building, tokenomics, we're seeing the early years of the crypto industry separate into meaningful segments, and understanding where your interests and skills overlap is really, really key. So,
yeah.
With that, my career and my story is is a bit unorthodox, which I know a lot of folks in Web3 kind of have similar stories that are unorthodox, and they end up finding this great community and really finding to, you know, this place as home, or to call home. So, you know, for me, I'm Colombian American. I grew up between the US, Florida, and Cali, Colombia, and grew up in a bilingual household, and really had a different kind of perspective on the world. Moved to Beijing, which was definitely a shock to the system when I was 17 years old. Did a local program there, an immersion program that was focused on Mandarin. And this is in 2009, 2010. So this is right off of the Beijing Olympics. So we're seeing a lot of interest with you know, international business and global trade. Yeah. And so I'm attending a local high school. I live with a local family. And through that experience, that 1 year there, become proficient and decide as a result to double major in international business and Chinese at the George Washington University in DC.
Max, at that point, because that's interesting,
yeah.
What would you have been thinking your career might be?
Well, I was thinking, you know, as I think a lot of people were in the early days, you know, international trade, whether it was import, export, or working for, I guess, a large multinational company being based in APAC, was kind of my trajectory. That's what I felt like. And you know, my sophomore year of college, I had tested out of all of the language classes. And so I said, all right, well, let's try to push this to the next level. And went back to China, directly enrolled at Tsinghua University. They had a really great fellowship program there called IUP. Did an intensive Mandarin course. And, you know, by that was doing a lot within private equity and venture, in terms of case studies in Mandarin, and got recruited by the largest domestic VC firm in China called Shenzhen Capital Group. And so for a lot of folks who don't know, domestic VC is government, you know, it's a government entity. So a lot of state money investing in technologies to kind of advance the local economy. So at that time, 2014, WeChat Pay and Alipay were all the talk of the town. And so I started really diving deep into Fintech. This is 2014, really before that term had even been coined, and had a great experience learning about that. Drew a lot of parallels because, you know, ever since I started earning a wage, I would send money back and forth to my family in Colombia, many of whom, you know, had, I guess, you know, simplistic ways to access the financial system. You know, I couldn't send it to an app. It had to go through a Western Union wire. Then they would then collect at their local bank. So I started thinking about the global side of fintech, and then that's where, you know, I graduated, moved to New York, worked on Wall Street for a year at a fintech startup, and I think 2017 it started all kind of converge for me: fintech, payments, and this new thing called blockchain and crypto. So took a leap of faith and moved out to the Bay Area to be the head of partnerships for a Korean blockchain startup called Yosemite X at the time. Yeah. They're now known as Blockchain Labs, but Yosemite X was building a tokenless layer 1 protocol, which was very unique at that time because that was the time of the ICO boom. And I was surrounded by really, really smart folks, folks from Stanford who had taken leaves of absences to get into the crypto space and to work side by side. So I felt like I was kind of in the right place. You know, we did a lot for those 2 years, got to work with a lot of really big investors as well as payment companies, because that was our initial focus. The long story short is that in 2019, 2020, the technology was adopted by the Korean government and currently serves as one of the largest blockchain implementations in the world by a government, with around 30 million users on this decentralized identity platform.
Max, just before we connect the final part of this career journey, what's the difference in that 2014 transferring back to relatives to, you know, in the last couple of years, how you would do that?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, in 2014, like I was saying, fintech was still very nascent. We were seeing kind of gradual improvements. And still, there's still a lot of improvements to be made when it comes to the global financial system. But I think the parallel to draw is that at that time we were seeing people being connected from all over the world, regardless of region, regardless of currency, regardless of socioeconomic factors. And so I felt it was a very globally unifying force, this idea of fintech. And I think there's a lot of parallels to the world of digital assets, of Web3, of cryptocurrencies that feel very similar to me. Right now I'm at Consensus. I'm in a hotel room in Austin, but yesterday and the day before, getting to meet these investors or these startup founders or product folks from massive multinational companies, all here from all over the world, is that same kind of spark that ignites, which is how kind of emphasizing how global this space is. And I think for me, that is the true kind of area that I focused on, and I think a lot of other people are focusing on in Web3.
Yeah, and Max, just before again we move into some examples that you come across at Plug and Play, so we can start thinking about what type of interesting companies are in the space, what type of skill sets would be conducive to be working in these, and then some practical tips perhaps. Just finished on that little career journey, because it's really interesting. That was the passion, starting to get interested in various financial technology trends, and then that coming together and you finding the right companies. Think about some of the ways that we could give techniques and tactics to anybody listening that you were doing there that might feel more soft. And just to give an example, it might be, were you putting projects of companies together that interest you? Were you networking out to them? Were you going to events? Were you reading certain type of literature? How were you also, getting yourself ready for the serendipitous moments, in essence?
Yeah, I think curiosity, networking, and adaptability are extremely important in this space because it's changing so much.
Yeah.
The network or the groups and events and articles and podcasts you read regularly are really important to kind of give you a bird's eye view of what's happening in the space. This space moves faster than any other space that I know of. And so, 1 week to another week, things could be completely different. And so it really is valuable to be staying on top of those key trends, because when you do have that opportunity to speak with someone within the space, you want to kind of exemplify the fact that you're knowledgeable and that you know where kind of the pulse is. Another big thing that I would suggest is to just talk to as many people in crypto as possible to begin their journey, because like mine, everyone has a very unique way in which we've got here, but also to kind of see what they're seeing. The crypto space is a very tight-knit community, and building friendships where you can benefit from wisdom over the years, networks, all of these things. Like, there is a genuine need for talented individuals, and so having those conversations and making sure that you're plugged into the right places, I think, is critical. It's different from any other industry. I say this a lot, but I really think it's true. It's like, if you have a bunch of banker friends, it's not going to work in the same way as if you have a bunch of friends who are working on DeFi protocols or working on NFT projects. A lot of the times they'll say, hey, can you lend a hand with community development? This is if you show that true, genuine interest and skill set. It is more open than other industries.
Yes, and I think also coming up to current time, 2022, we're still incredibly early on overall, most likely. And so there's an opportunity where you have, less experience if you have equal knowledge. And so that's not the same if an industry's been around for 20 or 30 years, because then there is a mass of individuals who've accrued position and also a history of intel, in essence. If you go deep into crypto, and let's say even into a particular part of crypto, it could be DAOs, it could be DeFi, it could be NFTs. all prominent areas at the moment. Within 6 months, you're putting yourself into probably a percent of the population in terms of the knowledge that you'd have. And then the way that you're going to level up that is, as you say, is to, accrue a network of people around you who you're collaborating with, but also sometimes you're adding value to, and sometimes you're taking value. And that value might just be, piquing your curiosity, telling you what they're up to, learning more, understanding about what's in the space. So all those dots are connecting. Max, to finish the last step of the journey to Plug and Play, could you talk us through what Plug and Play is all about and what your role there is?
Sure. Yeah. So Plug and Play is often referred to as the world's largest open innovation platform. And that's a broad and lofty term because we do a lot of things. So one is we have startup accelerator programs across our 47 offices. So we're in 26 countries now. And within those offices, we have industry specific verticals. So Fintech, InsurTech, crypto, IoT, health, mobility. Within those verticals, we also have corporate partners, actually 560 corporate partners globally. That's the likes of Pepsi, Mercedes-Benz, EY, US Bank, BNP Paribas, and these corporates work with us for a variety of different reasons, but one of them is to basically assist them in corporate innovation strategy. So because we have this startup accelerator program, which allows us to see many interesting early stage, typically pre-seed and seed, some Series A startups that come through our doors, we're able to recommend innovative solutions to maybe business challenges or for their specific business units. And so that leads us to the third and final pillar, which is the venture capital arm. So we're one of the largest global seed stage VCs in the world. We do about 250 checks per year. And some of those companies are companies that come through our accelerator. And some of them are opportunistic, and we have great events like Consensus and other events globally where we meet these startups and kind of invite them to join the Plug and Play family. So I would say that in terms of the scope of Plug and Play, we really focus on those early stage startups, but also on the corporate innovation journey with many of our partners to kind of bridge that gap. And within the context of Web3, we're very much in the same space, which is bridging the gap between Web2 and Web3. And so looking for startups that are building those kind of on-ramps to really onboard those next billion users into the space I like to call Web 2.5. That's kind of the plug and play model, but happy to double click on any of those things.
Yeah, thanks. That's so interesting. And one of the reasons we thought you'd be a brilliant individual to have on this, because you have a really broad view across many different things there. So how have you in Plug and Play seen the trend over the last few years from the institution, the large institutes, and just mentioned some of the largest in the world, and their appetite, you being the head of crypto, to connect and become 2.5, as you put it?
Yeah, I would say that we've seen a very interesting kind of journey from the institutions. We actually at Plug and Play, we were the first Bay Area Bitcoin meetup back in 2012. We had a lot of the big names at our headquarters every Friday for pizza and beers. We also were mining Bitcoin in our server room at Plug and Play before they realized how expensive the electricity cost was. But so we've been around the I guess crypto space for a while. And, in the early days of our Fintech program at Plug and Play, we had a lot of these kind kind of Bitcoin enthusiasts, and we had a lot of the early digital asset pioneers in the building. And so they were always discussing this idea of, a Bitcoin and different cryptocurrencies with a lot of the institutions who would come by. And at that time, let's call it 2013, 2014, it was definitely too early. And a lot of the institutions kind of, I won't say shunned it, but kind of brushed it off and basically said, yeah, this is a bit, what do they say, sixes and sevens, right, in the UK. So, around 2019, maybe 2020, we started to see the institutions kind of coming back around and almost doing a pulse check, checking in on this space. And it was hard not to, because the headlines everywhere were really talking about this new asset class and the emergence of a new kind of global economy underpinned by blockchain technology. And so I'd say over the past 2 years or so, we've seen a lot of these institutions with almost a completely new approach to innovation strategy, which is one that is a lot more open book and a lot more receptive to these new technologies and exploring them further than just a surface level interaction or pitch. We've seen pilots, we've seen POCs, we've seen large corporate deals, partnerships with blockchain and crypto startups. So I would say that this is the right time. Definitely, I think everyone is seeing this, whether it's in a corporate boardroom or whether it's at consensus on the ground floor of the conference center. We're all seeing that this is a trend that's here to stay, and the institutions, are wise to kind of try to get into that driver's seat and kind of self-disrupt, if you will.
Yeah, and I think it's important to probably talk through a little around what type of thesis you might have, and what type of trends we're going to see emerging over the next few years. But let's just recount whilst we can. As you say, around 2012 really was kind of when everything emerged from Bitcoin. And then if we look at the more recent few years, then what have been the things that anybody in the space might have from the outside, from a peripheral perspective, seen is the trading of token. So some people making money or losing money by trading token. And it's important to probably stress that 95% of those tokens probably won't be around. There was a lot of speculation in the space, and that's also where people's risk guard might have gone up. And then there's been the emergence of a real user case over the last couple of years in the NFT space, where we've seen a lot of digital art and creativity. But again, you can see that over a period of time, it's more likely that as it keeps on pushing on, more and more competition and more credibility, so that people feel there's a true value to the asset. And then we start to see the emergence of DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations, and communities coming together to manage whatever venture it might be that they're interested in. A lot of fun stuff going on in sport there, for instance. And then we've got the DeFi space, which is probably where the people from a fintech background have spent most of their time and most of the talent has come into. So we're in 2022, and we've had a moment in the space, and valuations have crashed, but like they have in the public markets as well, and like they have in just venture-backed markets as well. And so I think that this is the really exciting time, if you've got conviction, that over the next 2 years, possibly, this is where the biggest companies are going to come out. The competition might be reduced. The talent's going to locate itself to those best propositions. And so I do think, again, given we're talking about careers in blockchain here, let's have some conviction and go long like you just did. So this is probably the best time to get into the space. And let's think, what would we recommend might be the type of companies within the space moving forward, and what type of careers in those are the opportunities. So, I'll start with the first one that I think is really compelling in the space at the moment is to look at anything from an infrastructure perspective. So the companies who are building the toolkits and the infrastructure for this space, if they do it well, are probably here to stay. So we had Ledger on the show, for instance, which is a place to, kind of, it's a cold storage. And I think Ledger looks like a company with fantastic fundamentals that will be around for a long time and could be monumentally massive. Now, if you compare that to finding an altcoin, which doesn't particularly have much user case, you're taking a much more risky play with your career. If that's for you, that's for you. But it's trying to find these fundamental projects. You can find this in the foundations as well. You've been able to find this in the exchanges, because whether crypto goes up or down, obviously there's more volume flowing through the exchanges. What recommendations would you make here, Max?
Yeah, I would say, the one thing is everybody is different. So be genuine kind of to yourself. And what about blockchain or Web3 interests you the most? Is it finance? Then maybe DeFi would be interesting for you. Is it consumer? Maybe NFTs. Is it trading? Well, maybe, working at an exchange. Or if it's the engineering side, that's applicable to basically anything in the space, but protocol design, layer 1 and layer 2 protocol design would probably be a good fit. So I think, your inner passion will lead you to the right fit at the right type of blockchain company. But once again, it is some self-exploration that is needed to be able to kind of understand where you might be able to be, a value add within the ecosystem. And I think making that decision is obviously a very challenging one, but you also have to do an inner kind of a calibration, if you will, when it comes to risk versus reward. You mentioned going and working at maybe a smaller company or working at a more stable, well-established company in the space. And I think for me, I'll just say when I was younger, I was all about the risk, which is maybe why I chose my career path. But so at the time it didn't really make sense, jumping from place to place and kind of doing a deep dive and understanding the industry and kind of just almost organically flowing to that next evolution. But obviously everyone has a different set of skills and a different path and a different risk tolerance that I think is super crucial to self-evaluate.
You're back.
Yes, I'm back because I am this person tracking the time, because I do want to leave a few minutes actually for the Q&A. I have one question and then one kind of statement from Donald, which reminded me about one of the use cases of NFTs, just proof of attendance. I do share that every time. At every talk, I do share the POAP, which everyone is able to scan and collect like a free NFT for just, I don't know, Max, have you heard about POAPs?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You should grab this one then.
I will.
Because I was making for each talk. So yeah, so it's something that we discussed previously at other talks, how great this is actually for the education, the POAPs, because I can uniquely verify that someone watched or attended an event, and I won't have situations where the students would just write the names of their friends on a sheet of paper, faking the attendance. But yeah, so the question, this is more, I think, a wider question to you. So hi, Max, after listening to your fascinating life story, what advice would you give to someone starting their career? No, very open. Doesn't have to be in blockchain even.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the one of the things for, let's just say, blockchain, crypto, or this could be, really applied to everything, which is remember that, it's still relatively early within these new technologies, and they take time to fully materialize and penetrate the world. So accordingly, there will be ups and downs and a lot of volatility. But if it's something that you truly love, whether it's fintech or whether it's digital assets, you can start building those foundational skills that I mentioned before, for the times that everything is roses, right? So I would say that, like and Lloyd mentioned this before, now is a time to go all in if this is a space that you're interested in, because we are in a bit of a rocky phase, and when we come out of this phase, you'll be all the better for it. So that's kind of my advice. I mean, another big thing is just follow like your true passions, recognize what values are important to you, and then by correlation, you'll kind of realize what industries or what specific sub segments are most applicable to your skill set. So I would say that the deep introspection is a very important kind of first step in that career journey.
Yeah, I completely agree. I agree with the foundation thing, because we had this conversation, a few years ago about fintech. How is it to enter fintech? Like, and I was just thinking, I don't know, have some foundation from financial services. Kind of, we could see the movement. Basically, everyone who came out from financial services, they moved to fintech, but the foundations were there. And the same similar, I think, is for blockchain. Like, these are not people who overnight became coders. These were people who previously coded in just different languages and just switched to, smart contract coding. But it's really not overnight, and it's been kind of years and years of doing something maybe not like SEO keywords, the right one on CVs, but it's still something that it's transferable. And even, if the industry changes, you can still adapt, having the right foundations. I completely agree with that. And I hope students at Imperial College London have these foundations, the ability. I'm really, looking at our department, design engineering. They do combine all different value skill sets that I hope will equip them in the future careers. I need to stop the POAP, but yeah, I don't know. I think if anyone has issues with that, then do message me, and then I'll figure out what to do with the POAP. So I'll share that later. I'll share that to you, Max, as well.
Yeah, I just received it in the wallet. So.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah,
I got it as well. Okay, cool, amazing. I'm so excited about this POAPs. It's addictive. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for this wonderful conversation. Unfortunately, we'll have to wrap up. This is our last talk in the series. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. So tomorrow, our partners, Showcode, are kicking off with the Athena Hackathon. The partners of this in-person, all-women, non-binary hackathon comes to likes, including Deliveroo, CISCO, Visa, Lloyd's Bank, NHS Digital. Like, it's not just Web3 blockchain. This is traditional institutions that are already discussing kind of the space. So do check it out. Do check the hackathon out. And lastly, I'd like to thank our sponsors, New Foundation, who has supported us throughout this whole series. Next week, we will be celebrating with a massive, and I'm saying literally massive, like this is like not, theoretically massive installation for the Exhibition Road Festival outside the Science Museum and Victoria Albert Museum in South Kensington in London. So if you're here next weekend, do pop by and say hi to me. And that's it for now. Thank you guys. Thanks, Max. Thanks, Lloyd, for this fantastic conversation, and have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you.